This episode of the Nerdball Podcast is sponsored by Jake Pilewski at Real JP Multimedia. He does the music for this podcast. He has produced this podcast. If you need anything audio-visual done, he is the man to see at realjp.com, REELJP.com. Let's start the show.
This is Jake Pilewski, and you're listening to and watching the Nerdball Podcast.
This is the Nerdball Podcast with Lorenzo Melcher.
All right, Jake, thanks for coming on the podcast. Do you ever take your hat off? People want to know.
Yeah, I did a little bit ago to shower.
So you even wear it just in your house, just to be in your house?
A lot of times, yeah.
Yeah? Oh, that's crazy to me. I mean, I used to wear a lot of hats, but I would take them off in my house.
I think the biggest thing is that it took me many years to find hats that fit. So now that I finally found them, I embrace them.
All those years of not having a good hat, I'm just going to wear it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's become a part of me now.
So the first part of this episode, is all episodes, is what is something you've been nerding out about, something that you've been really into lately? I know your life revolves around your music and video and stuff, but is there something besides that you because that's the premise of this question, it can't be your job, so what's to get away from that, what's something you're really into?
I mean, everyone already knows that I'm really into pro wrestling, but I am obsessed with there's a couple different channels on YouTube that it becomes a rabbit hole. Like they make, I think it's called What Culture, because they do a bunch of stuff about film and video games and stuff too, but they do a What Culture wrestling.
Okay.
And so they will just do like these 10 to 15 minute videos on like the top 10 bloopers of the 1990s wrestling or something. It's just like random stuff like that. And so those are usually my little escapism kind of things, like in the morning when I'm having my banana before I go to the rec and whatever. So it's those for sure. But that becomes, all of a sudden, I end up watching somebody make a random dish that I'm never going to make.
Well, I would imagine like you turn this on, like, all right, I just need like 10, 15 minutes. And then you're like, wait, it's 2 hours. 2 hours went by.
I mean, I wish I allowed myself to do 2 hours sometimes, but I'm thinking it's going to be like 3 minutes and it ends up being closer to an hour. So for sure, it's the same concept.
So have you ever, because I talked to my old host a few episodes ago, Andrew Massey, and he talked about collecting figurines and that kind of stuff with wrestling. Were you ever into that? Like collecting any collectibles or anything?
Yeah. I mean, when I was a little kid, they weren't collectibles, they were my actual toys, but
yeah.
But I would say, I think I was probably 13, 14 years old. I started asking for, so I think it was it's WWF at the time, but WWE, they had a whole new like action figure line that they signed some deal with. I think it was Jack Pacific, maybe it was the brand, and they put out a whole series in 96, 97, 98. And so I did whatever I could to try to collect all of them. That's what I asked for Christmas, for birthday, for anything. And my brother and sister, my parents are just like, why does our middle school child want toys?
Yeah.
And I was like, they're not toys, they're figures. And I'm not going to play with them. They're like, so then what are you going to do with them? And I was like, display them.
Yeah.
And probably had like 30 or 40 of them. So
really?
It's not many compared to actual collectors, but I mean, they're somewhere. I think they might be in our garage.
I was just going to ask you if you still had them.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if any of them are worth anything since they're all open. Because that was the big thing too that annoyed my brother. Because I mean, I'm the youngest of three, and my brother would collect baseball cards, but he would put them in cases, and he would some stuff like you just don't open. And he's like, so wait, you're not gonna even leave these in the casing? You're not gonna play with them? You're just collecting them, but you're gonna open them? And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't want to just like display them in their boxes. Then it'll just look like a retail shelf in the house. But I don't know what I was doing. They might be worth something. who knows? Otherwise, I'll gift them to somebody.
Well, when I talked to Andrew, he was the same thing. Like he takes everything out of the boxes. He goes, "What's the point of holding it in these boxes when like, yeah, I don't play with them because I'm older now, but I can see them and I if I can pick one up if I want to." And he goes, and I asked if he kept the boxes. He goes, only for a few things, but for the most part, he gets rid of the boxes and just has these figurines.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that was my thinking when I was 13. That was a while ago. So
Yeah,
but I imagine that's what I was thinking.
sure. Now, in your adult life, you have a home. What are what? I think I know the answer, but what are the chances those ever find a place where you can display them?
No, it won't happen. And that's not because of me or my wife. It's because we truly have like tried to do like less of everything. I mean, it's
Okay.
because she's really good at like picking up stuff to decorate the house and make it more homey. I don't think 30 action figures would make it more homey by any
Well, maybe
means.
not 30. Maybe you find like 2 or 3 that are like, man, these are the my favorite ones, and you just stick them up, in your studio or something, right?
The 2 action figures that I do have out in my studio are the ones that were from our wedding cake, and that's Macho Man, Randy Savage, and Miss Elizabeth.
Okay.
That was our cake topper at our wedding. So those are on display in the studio. Other than that, the rest of them, as soon as I find them, they're gonna probably go elsewhere, whether I sell them or give them away.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's always a tough thing to try to like. I mean, you can see behind me all my sports junk, but it's in the basement. It doesn't hardly ever get seen besides these YouTube videos and whenever, I don't know, when the kids are down here with friends or something. But even me, like I have all this stuff displayed. Very seldom do I go up to it and just like look at it, because I mean I know it's there, but I can like I think the one time that'll happen is when I take it down and I'm putting stuff in boxes and giving it to Mateo or Lillian or whoever wants it. Otherwise, it just sits up there.
So it's not like hey, today is March 20th. It's been 3 weeks since I touched the Wheaties box.
Yeah. Yeah. Haven't done that in a while.
No.
There is a bunch of cool stuff. It's just it just sits up there though. So I'd imagine it'd be the same thing, except like I said, this is invisible. It'd be a whole different story if there was some stuff upstairs.
Yeah, and I think it would be different too. Like if I because so much like my studio, I mean, is full of gear that I use that I have. I mean, there's so much of it anyway that there's really no room for anything else. And even that, it's hard sometimes to find places for everything. So like, I guess it's different, because I work, so much of the work I do is from home. So I need that space. I suppose like there's a lot of people that, when they leave their job, they come home, nothing comes with them from their job. And so a lot of people do have dedicated spaces for collectibles and stuff, which makes so much more sense because they don't have to work from home. So
yeah. Well, speaking of all your music and stuff, you are fresh off your album debut, I guess, or what album release for your new album. Something a stone unturned. Something about a river, possibly.
a tape unraveled.
A tape unraveled. Okay.
And then a bell unrung.
Got it. Okay. I feel like a horrible family member. At the very least, I should have had the CD down here to look at.
Hey,
I didn't anticipate it saying it. So, I mean, before I ask you questions about it, I do want to say, I've never been to an album release party, so I didn't know what to expect. It was really cool. At the second floor, Levi, Lilac, and Mommy. I never even been there before. So before the music, we ate dinner, which was awesome. Never eaten there, so that was cool. But how you have the whole setup, before you even said it, I thought, man, this feels like an MTV Unplugged, because that's how it felt to me. And then you mentioned that too. But it was a real cool place, real cool venue. Obviously, the music was awesome. There was a bunch of musicians there, and it was so awesome that you're going to do 2 more shows, which we can talk about that too. I don't know if I know you've been getting a lot of emails, so we can talk about it if there's tickets available and stuff still. But as just a fan of you and listening to it, it was an awesome experience, and I'm glad I was able to be there. to experience it, because it was a cool thing, and something that very few people will ever be able to say, like, hey, I was at this album release party. And it was a cool thing. But I know there's a lot of work into it. So before that night, leading up to it, first of all, how'd you say this is where I want to do it? How'd you pick Levi and Lilac?
Good question. Because there was a lot of names that got tossed around, or how we were going to do a release party. I mean, party / concert, you know. So I mean, naturally, the first one, when I was creating the album, the only place I was playing at when I was creating the album was Cinco de Mayo, because I started writing the album in 2020. And at the time, they were the only ones having music. And obviously, at that time, I mean, a live concert wasn't even really, I mean, there was no real concept behind it at that point. It was just kind of like, I know I want to do a release show somewhere. But at the time, the only options we had were to do outside. And I was like, well, it ain't going to be ready this year. I mean, because I just started writing it in 2020. And so we figured at the earliest we'd be able to do anything would be the spring or summer of 2021. And at that point, I'd been playing at Levi and Lilacs on Mondays for their Whiskey Monday nights. And even then, the hard part was just like, you know, where do you have something like that? Because Village Idiot is wonderful. And I play there, you know, once a month, and there'd be a great crowd, except that's not really a place that you can. We wanted to have more of like a listening show, just like you had said, the MTV Unplugged vibe. There's a place up in Ann Arbor that we love called the Arc that has shows like that all the time. And so we wanted to create that kind of vibe, but the problem is it's like Village Idiot's not that vibe. Village Idiot's wonderful, but Village Idiot has more of that like rock and roll kind of
participation. Almost. Yeah. And
so, you know, we love them, but we're like, can't do it there. I mean, even the owner said, I mean, you wouldn't be able to pull it off there.
Well, just being at it, like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, there's no way it would happen there.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, and we knew we wanted some kind of intimate thing. And even with like Cinco de Mayo, we said, I mean, it'd be cool if it was outside, and we did it on the patio. But then again, I mean, on a patio, if you have something like that going on, there's still a parking lot right next there, and there's railroad tracks. And almost every time I play out on the patio, a train goes by, and I'm like, that's super fun when you can make light of it and play a train song. But like when you're trying to like do an actual intimate concert, that could be all sorts of weird. And so, and obviously inside there wouldn't work. So we're just like tossing around ideas. So Megan and Sean, the owners of Levi and Lilacs, like we were sitting down, because I mean, by this point, it was getting late last summer of 2021 where we really started. I mean, I was almost wrapping up the album, and we were just talking like, you know, maybe early fall, but I don't think it's going to be ready. So probably late fall. But then we're also like, got to remember, it was just this past June that masks came off in restaurants, because up to that point, we were all wearing masks. And like, I mean, nobody felt comfortable putting a bunch of people into a small room either. So there was a lot of things that had to change. And I said, the closer we got to winter, even before COVID, is always the time of the year that everybody gets sick. And so we're just like, I don't feel comfortable putting something together inside November, December, January, even February. And so Sean said to me, he's like, well, you know, I mean, it's going to be spring before you can even do it then, like March at the earliest. And I said, yeah, but I think March would be a lot better. He's like, you want to wait that long? And I said, people are occupied in December. They got Christmas, they got holidays, they got all sorts of stuff. I was like, so rather get lost in the shuffle with all that kind of stuff. I'm like, we can breathe a little bit, put a little more time and thought into it. So then luckily they were talking about maybe closing down their restaurant and doing the concert somewhere on the first floor. But logistically still, we didn't know where. I mean, because I was like, well, he's like, you know, we could close off the restaurant, just put single seating, and we could probably put 50 people in there. And I said, but I'm putting a 9-piece band together. He's like, 9-piece?
Well, that and Levi and Lilac is, I mean, it looks like an old home. It's very segmented, right? I mean, it was like a hotel or whatever at one point. So it's very segmented. So it'd be hard to have something on the first floor.
Yeah. Because I mean, every room in there, you can't put more than like 30, 40 people in there. And I didn't want to have just some people like sitting and listening. And it's not like you can knock out a supporting wall, because it's a supporting wall from the 1800s and it's all brick. So I can't do that. So then the option was, he's like, well, you know, we could always rent out the second floor. The second floor has been vacant for years. They used to, like, the landlords there used to rent it out for private events and stuff, and even small weddings. I think it's like 110, 120 capacity up there for events, and we could just rent that out for you for the night, and that'd be our gift to you. And I was like, no, I mean, like, we can figure out, because we're gonna have tickets that we're gonna sell. We'll make sure that you're taken care of and that we at least break even on it. And so I said, obviously, if they're gonna charge you like 500 to rent it out, there's no, I mean, I'm not into that. So because I was like, I want to at least break even. I don't want to spend money just to put this thing on. And so sure enough, like, he's like, all right, well, let's go ahead and plan on that. And then through the process of planning, I mean, I started really, like, once we decided we were going up there, which was probably November, December, we figured out, let's set a date. So I think we set a date by middle of December, said, all right, March 8th. And still people are just like, that's really far away. And I said, it's not far away. It'll be here. And then you wish it was another 3 months away when it comes to planning that stuff. So
was March 8th just like an arbitrary date, or was it like, I want this date for a specific reason?
We had about 6 dates that I sent out, because that's the thing too, like with a 9-piece band, out of that band, I think 7 of us are all career musicians, so we all have gigs in other bands and other projects. So, and we were shooting for a Tuesday or a Wednesday, because logistically, that's like 2 of their slower nights at Levi and Lilacs. And when you have a parking lot doesn't matter if it's busy, like on a weekend. So then you wouldn't have anywhere to park.
Yeah.
And plus then our guests and everything could go, and like you said, you could eat before or after. And we just wanted to make logistically the best possible experience. And all of us career musicians, a lot of times, are off on a Tuesday or Wednesday, where we gig, Thursday through Sunday. So, so it just worked out. Everybody was like, March 8th seemed to be the common denominator, like the common date that everybody could actually make happen. So when we did, it was great. And I think by the end of December, early January, all of a sudden, Sean and Megan said that they were going to take over the second floor, acquire that for a year, just to maybe host events there, this being the one to kick it off. So certainly after, with all the weddings and stuff I've done, all the events that I've worked in bands and stuff, it was nice having that knowledge, because it made the process, like, the little things you think of to make sure that everything flows. I wouldn't have had that knowledge without all that experience, like doing weddings and stuff.
Well, you can tell when I was there. First of all, you can tell that it wasn't planned overnight or even a month out. Like you could tell, this is the place I'm going to do it, and here's how we're going to do it, because everything was like taken care of. There wasn't, for just on my eye, and it's the same for when you're actually getting married. When the people getting married, you don't know, you're going to know the things that go wrong because you're in charge of it, but your guests aren't. And that was the same thing for me at this thing at your album release. Like if there was issues, I didn't know about it. Like everything was so good. Everything sounded good. Even the way you guys did a bar with the 2 tickets, go up there. Here's a you can pick from selected drinks. That was a good idea. Like, to have all these plans and all these thoughts, like, it was well thought of, which when people showed up, all they had to worry about was like, I'm going to get my drink and I'm going to sit and listen to this music. And it was so well thought out. That was all people had to think about. So it made it a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. Cause that was me sitting down and making a list. Amanda helped me make a list of things just like that. Like I said, you normally wouldn't think of. I mean, you think you're having an album release show, you just invite friends and you make sure the band's there and you play music. There's a lot more that goes into it to make it logistically make sense. And so, so that was great. I mean, like, I had a great team of people to help do it. And obviously, a lot of help setting it up. And what really made it nice is that up until they took over that second floor, we just assumed we were going to have about 2 days to throw that all together in that room. And so because they took it over, we ended up getting about a week to put that all together. So that was really nice. because that's
Yeah.
like companies that set up for weddings. They usually only have 24 to 48 hours to set up and tear down. So that's kind of what our thinking was. And luckily we had a week to do it to set up. So that was
yeah. Because then all those things that go wrong, like, oh, this chair broke, or this thing is a little bit. It was supposed to be here today. It's not going to show up until tomorrow. All that stuff made it a little bit easier, because I know you were probably nervous the day of and leading up to it. The day of, what were you most nervous about? Because, like I said, I'm sure you were nervous, but what was affecting it the most?
I think it was just a matter of it was just taking care of all the little tiny last minute logistic things. I mean, I had a big long list of everything. So I knew everything I had to get done. I didn't even have time to be nervous about performing or anything, because it was more so, am I going to be able to get all the stuff done in time? I mean, part of the nervousness was that we, as a full band, only had one rehearsal for this show. So, I mean, it's not like we put hours and hours and hours of rehearsal into it. I sent out the songs weeks in advance. And I wrote out all the notes and everything.
Yeah. So that was another thing. I didn't know you wrote the music for everybody, which is amazing to me. Because I mean, maybe it's not amazing. I don't know, but I do want to tell you, like, for me to hear that, I'm like, oh my God, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Well, that's we were all kind of like talked about it after the fact, and a lot of those guys that play in the band, I mean, little bits and pieces were improvised naturally, but they all had parts that were kind of written out and we discussed in advance, just because that's the difference between like what makes a good orchestra versus like a band of guys just jamming. Like you can jam and it can be fun, but like depending on the certain style of music, that wouldn't really work for those songs. And those songs very much, even you listen to the album, it goes in and out, very similar to that of like classical music versus, just a rock band that's playing a bunch of noise together, So it's that was fun for them, because even our drummer for it, he was just like, this was really neat. He's like, I got to do less, but when I did something, it meant so much more, because that's the nice thing about written parts and everything. So, but yeah, so I mean, the day of, like, nervousness wise, I mean, I think part of it was, am I gonna have enough time to get everything done? Am I gonna have time to feed these guys? Because I want to take care. I mean, that's a big like team builder kind of thing, is that I would, at the rehearsal and at the night of, if I'm asking them for their time, I want to make sure that, they're taken care of, as far as like, do you have something to eat before we play? Do you have, I had Gatorade and beer and whatever for everybody, just to make sure that everybody was comfortable. Because I said, if you're not comfortable and you're not having fun, then there's no point of any of this. So, so that was, that was like where the nerves came from. I kept like just looking at the clock, and I was just running around all day. And so like when it was finally time for the, like 6:15 is when we opened the door for people to come up to that second floor. By that point, I could finally breathe, which was nice, because then it gave me about 45 minutes to kind of chill before we went up and performed. So,
well, I would imagine the performance is the easy part, right? I mean, that's what all of you've been doing for your whole lives. So why would that be difficult? That's the part you look forward to, and that's the part you're like, okay, this is what we've been working for. This is easy. Let's go. Let's play.
Yeah, I mean, even that was still a little nervous, because I kind of joked about it that night, where I'm like, you dream of that moment where you're playing your own music in front of a attentive crowd, and everyone's locked in. It's like, but then all of a sudden it happens, and and you're like deer in the headlights, because you're like, oh, I'm used to people just talking, and they may or may not get into a song that I'm playing. It's like, now everyone is just like locked in. And so, and again, I mean, with only one rehearsal under our belts, I was just like, there's a lot of pressure on all these guys right now. So, but that's, I mean, I think pressure is good, because I mean, you perform better typically. So
and I was the MC for that event, and I wanted to.
You did wonderful, by the way.
Well, thank you. I wanted to help more, because I know you had stuff going on, and people were helping you set up and do all that kind of stuff. But I was really just waiting for you, because I had no information. Like what do you want me to say? So I wanted to be like, hey, just let me do it. But I couldn't, because I don't know the information you want, Also, I also felt I didn't want to like bother you to be like, hey, are you gonna get this to me? Are you gonna get this to me? Are you gonna get this to me? Like, when's this happening? Because I want to practice too. But it worked out okay. But I felt helpless because I was like, I want to help him more, but I can't. So
Yeah.
so
No,
I think it's, I mean, it worked out well. You gave me your bullet points and stuff you wanted, and everything was okay. Which I didn't. I mean, I talk in front of people all the time and stuff, but to me, it was super important to like do exactly what I needed to do. And I mean, I was up until I went on stage. I was in the back corner by the elevator, just like going through it. Because I also don't like looking at notes when I, when I want to do stuff. So I just kept trying to memorize it. But I think it went really well, and it was cool to be a part of it. So thanks for asking me to do it.
well, yeah, you did wonderful. And that's, I mean, I had all sorts of compliments about you doing that. And they were like a number of people said, what a great idea to have Lorenzo kick it off. To like, because we didn't, like I told you, I was like, I didn't want to be rock stars and just hide the whole time until it was time to come out. Like I greeted people as they came up, and then, but I said, but for the sake of the camera, it'd still be cool to make like an actual entrance. And it was nice, rather than me getting out and talking and setting boundaries and rules and all that kind of stuff. Like it was nice because you do it so well, and you add the comic relief. And my mom said, she's like, but you know what? It was also nice because here's a guy with a commanding presence, like yourself, saying all this stuff. So it's not like, I'm like, yeah, that's true. Because I'm like, who's going to mess with Lorenzo if they get out of line?
Well, it almost was. And if I'm able to do it again, if timing works for me, the part about me, like, hey, it's listening experience, make sure not hooting and hollering and all that stuff. It almost was too, like, they almost followed the rules too much, because right. I think what I'm going to say next time is like hoot and holler, all that stuff in between songs, because then like, after your first song, people just like clapped and stuff, and on my mind,
it was like we got a hole in one.
Yeah, it was like too much. Like they listened very well, and so I think when that thing, when I do say it again, like it's okay to be raucous in between. Like that's when you want it, just not during stuff. So it worked out, like you said. Like who's gonna be like, oh, this guy told us not to do this stuff, so we're gonna listen. Also, Also another thing which was very cool. I've very rarely, if ever, have I been somewhere, a play, a music performance, a sporting event, any of that stuff. I looked around, like maybe like 3 or 4 songs in, and I turned to Andrea. I go, Andrea, there is not one phone out right now, not one, taking video, audio, any of that stuff. Oh, I gotta plug my computer in. I just realized that. And it was so cool to see everyone just listening and not worry about capturing something on film.
Yeah, well, that was kind of our thing too. And I know people will announce that at like weddings and stuff, because they're like, at weddings they'll be like, we paid good money for a photographer and videographer, like,
but people still do it,
and they still do it. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to grab my plug real quick.
You're fine.
I normally don't do 2 podcasts in one day, but I'm out of town, so I had to next week, so I had to squeeze another one in. But yeah, it was like I said, it was such a cool thing to see, and it was all those people that that loved you and wanted to be there, so they're gonna just, like, again, follow the rules. They're gonna be there to watch this thing, and it was really cool.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, that's just one of those things too that a lot of people said, I've never experienced anything like that before, and I said that's a huge part of it. It was very in the moment.
Yeah. What if you had to? I think leading up to it, let's say it's two separate instances. Leading up to it, what was your favorite part? Leading up to the day, not counting the day, but leading up to it.
I mean, for sure, like I love the concept, like, of putting together like something brand new. I mean, because that whole second floor is just a big empty, like, old school wedding hall.
Yeah.
And with the lights on and no floor plan, I mean, it's fun. Looks a little dated, but I mean, it's you have to really think outside the box to make something out of it. And so it was really fun coming up with a floor plan, like with the seating arrangement. It was a lot of fun building the light truss that hung all of our lights. because when we started getting those steps in place, all of a sudden what was in my head started actually coming into reality. And that was like the really fun part, is actually putting all those little pieces together and seeing it come into looking like a venue, like an actual concert venue, that before it was just an empty room. And so that, I mean, that part's always been fascinating to me, because when I would go to like pro wrestling events as a kid, I was always fascinated with seeing that. I would go, like, maybe I would see that same arena, but with a hockey game going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden I walk in and it looks like the Monday Night Wrestling show, like that I'm used to. And I'm just fascinated by how you can do that to a space. And
there's awesome time-lapse videos of the flip arounds of arenas that are
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah. Like when they do like the halftime shows at Super Bowl is just fascinating, because they do that so quick.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to me. And so that part to me is like really exciting. So like that's, and like I was excited about the music and all that stuff, but like it was even more fun because the music was already done. So now
and well, the music is something you do all the time, and this is like a special thing where, like, yeah, it probably sucks and setting up lights and stuff, but ultimately, like, we're transforming something here.
Yeah. I mean, it was a complete DIY kind of thing, which that's like I think that's the coolest part about it. It's like we knew what venue we wanted, it just didn't exist, so we had to make it.
That which is another awesome thing. Like I have this vision, this vision in my mind, and I'm also making it happen. We're making this thing happen.
Yeah, and that was probably the neatest part about it. I was just like, I mean, the album is cool and all, but it's like then we had to build this other thing to make the album feel even better for everyone. So
and the day of when you look back on that day, or maybe it was later that night or the next day, like what stands out the most?
I don't know. I mean, it was all pretty overwhelming. Like from the very first song, like just playing that and like we rehearsed that Saturday before, and Amanda, my wife, was in the front row at the rehearsal. She came and helped along. So like I said, we got lunch for everybody and stuff. And, anybody that was going to be a part of the show, we just said, if you want to be here to see, kind of like what's happening, the flow of everything. So that Saturday, like these were the first time we were playing these songs as a full band. Up until that point, it had just been me recording them in the studio. And so from the first song we hit at the rehearsal, it was just like goosebumps kind of thing, because I've heard them 100 times in the studio, mixing it and everything. And then you hear full 9-piece band playing it live, and it was just like, "Ooh, this is cool." And so we knew it was going to be cool after we had the rehearsal, but like you can only envision people and their reactions. And then when the actual reactions came from the very first song, the golf claps after the first song, and then they got more amped up. And there was certain moments that I had chills at rehearsal that I was just like, I can't wait till these moments happen and we're in a room full of people. Because if I got chills in an empty room, it's going to be really cool when it's full of people. And so just like there was little moments like that throughout the night where I was just like, not only was it cool that people were really into it, but it was cool that I could look around and I said, I know every single one of these people. It wasn't like a room full of strangers. That was a great community and network that we built over the past, many years, but especially the last 2 years when we all felt gutted. You kind of rebuild. And that was, I think, the neatest part. And then seeing so many people that, when you think a year beforehand, we couldn't even think of doing anything like that, So that was just neat seeing the progress, and like also just going, man, I can't believe this whole process started 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine there's similar feelings when I did stand-up comedy. I would write jokes and tell them, and in my head I'm like, ooh, they're gonna really like that one, and then you tell it and it's okay, or they don't like it, but they like this other one that you thought was a throwaway. I would imagine there's some similar feelings to when you're playing music. You probably have like, these are my favorite songs, or this is my favorite part, or whatever. Everyone should like this, and then there's other parts that stand out to the crowd, and you're like, "Ooh, I didn't even think about that part."
Yeah, naturally. I mean,
Yeah.
especially playing in bars and stuff. I mean, I get that all the time because you can. I mean, I'm usually really good at reading a room, but even then, there's going to be surprise factors. And I mean, with playing at a bar, you're playing cover songs and stuff, and so like I'll try a song, and be like, oh, they're gonna love this one, and then it's like, and then I'll play something that I didn't think anything of, and like that's the one. I'm like, all right, well, we're going with it. And so then you try it with the same crowd next time, and they don't react the same. You're just like, okay, I give up.
Yeah, because you don't know what's gonna happen. It's and I guess that's the cool thing about music is, and especially with you, because you're a professional and you can play a bunch of different stuff. So you can it ebbs and flows until you find that line, like, okay, this is it. This is where we're at tonight,
Yeah.
And it could be
But
the same restaurant, just a week apart, and the same people. It's just a different vibe.
Yeah. But I mean, I think at our March 8th show, it's certainly a lot of the parts that really moved me during rehearsal are exactly the parts that people really went for
Nice.
at the show, just because it's kind of like if you see like a really, really good film, if I'm the only one that's seen it,
Yeah.
and I know like The Dark Knight, for instance, like certain scenes with the Joker, like if I'm the only one in that room that's seen it so far, I know these people are going to go nuts at these little parts because I was so taken back from it. And that's certainly, there was like 3 or 4 moments that night that I was just like, oh yeah, like they're loving this. and I was loving it at the exact same time, just because it was new to me, because I had 8 other musicians around me playing it with me live. And that was all, it's like made the songs all brand new again.
Was that the most people you've had on stage playing instruments with you?
Yeah, I mean, because we've with like Day Drinkers at the Village Idiot, I think at one point we had like 8 people on stage, but like that was like 3 people singing and everybody playing. But that's definitely the most moving parts as far as instruments go that we've had. And again, and that's why you have to have direction, and you have to have some kind of game plan and actual like roadmap for all the musicians. Because if you just put 9 musicians on stage and said, here's a song, just play along, it would just sound like mud.
And it was I would imagine some thought has to go into and how you arrange them, not the music, but how you physically arrange people. Because even when I was up there like talking before the show, emceeing the show, like I was nervous I was going to step on something that I shouldn't be. I was like, well, as long as I stay, this is where Jason's going to stand, I'll stand here, and then this is where he's going to walk through, so I'll just walk through here, because there was so much stuff up there. How much thought goes into that? Because obviously when you're playing music or any instrument, you're there, you're not really moving around. So but how much thought is like, hey, this is going to be here and this is going to be here, like, because I would imagine that affects the sound too.
Yeah, I mean, well, when we it was a 2-part process. Like first, when we were developing the floor plan, I said we have to keep in mind there's going to be 9 of us. So I was like, we've played on small stages before, and even though that dance floor that we used as our stage that night, even though that's big, I said it's not big when you put 9 musicians plus their instruments up there. Mm-hmm. So we planned the seating around that to allow enough room. But then the day of rehearsal, we got cut short on time in rehearsal because of how long it took us to set up where we were going to be. Like, the drums almost always should be in the middle toward the back. And the bass needs to be right by the drums, because those two are like hand in hand. So, and then other than that, it's like, all right, well, since I was conducting the band and wrote all of it, like I was going to be more at the forefront, so I could turn around and still actually connect and kind of coordinate with everybody. But at that point, it's just like, all right, where can we fit everybody? Where can we fit all the gear? And that was, I think, the biggest challenge. But we couldn't do that until the day of rehearsal, when we just realized just how much stuff we had to fit up there. And especially because I said I wanted to use 4 main speakers rather than 2. Most bands will use 2 main speakers, just a left and a right. And we instead did a left center, right center, and then a left and a right, because I said, if we want a really nice sound up there and don't have to overcompensate because people way over here, people way over there don't get the center shot, I'm like, put 2 speakers going out that way and then 2 in the center. Then technically you don't have to drive as much volume through them, because you just have more balanced sound.
Oh, okay.
just
Yeah.
like a surround sound kind of thing. So that helps. So it's just, I mean, that's the nerd stuff coming out, but that's the science of it, you know. It's
Sure.
little things like that. And like our cellist, I had her sit next to me because you know, she wasn't on every song, but more importantly, she's got to be able to hear herself. And if she's sitting right next to the drums, she ain't gonna hear anything because she's
Yeah.
not plugged into an amplifier or anything. So just all those little things. And so what looked like a really big dance floor that we were going to set up as our stage, as soon as we all put ourselves on it, we're like, and there goes all our space.
With sound too, I know when I listen to, even with podcasts, more times than not, people will notice sound when it's bad.
Yes.
So you talking about the 4-speaker, like I don't pay attention to that because everything sounded really good. So why would I know, like, oh, they use 4 or they're oriented this way or this or that, because everything sounded good. So no one's going to pay attention to it.
Yeah. And we were lucky. I mean, because I love running sound. That's like half of what I love about music is the actual sound engineering part. But live sound and studio sound are very, very different. But our buddy Frank May, he's the one that played. He was one of the guitarists, and he sang back. He ran all the sound because he he's really, really good at balancing frequencies for live sound. And so he offered to do it. And I said, hey,
oh, nice.
If you're willing to take that off my hands, like, that's great. And especially because he has he's got a, you know, every sound has a mixing board. But my mixing board, like when we would run, you and I together, those comedy nights, like I've got to run the board all the way back to me. So I have to have cables long enough to go up to the stage so I can sit there and mix everything. He's got a nice digital setup so that his mixing board is actually on an iPad. And
nice.
Somebody can be sitting across the room with no cables running to it, and you can control it all digitally like that. So we had our buddy Rick Caswell sitting back in the corner with the iPad in case anything needed adjusted throughout the show. So
that's
that
awesome.
was that was nice. So we technically had 2 sound guys, one that set it all up and then one that just kind of babysat the soundboard, just in case anything went awry. But he said, I didn't really have to do anything except sit there and drink beer. It was great. Like, well, you had the best job then.
But I said ultimately that's what you want from your sound guy, right? Not have to touch. You can just, like you said, babysit. So what's the plan with the album now? It's out. I have a physical. We have physical copies. I gave one. Actually, we had 2, so I gave one to my parents. And is it going to be streamable? Like, are people going to be able to find us on Spotify and any of that kind of stuff?
So the reason the album has such a long title is because it's all 3 titles from the 3 different EPs that I released from July through November. So all the songs are already up there as separate EPs. I am going to upload a version of it just as the full album itself to make it easier for people. It's under Jake and the Venom. Mind you, a lot of my buddies, who one of which was even playing in the band, was looking for Jake Pilewski and couldn't find the songs. That's
what I just looked at right now.
Yeah. And I said, dude, I was like, you see all the notes I've sent out say Jake and the Venom concert. I was like, and he's like, yeah, I know. So he couldn't find the songs to save his life. But
neither could I. So
right, there you go. So it's Jake and the Venom. And I'll upload a full album version of it here soon. But in the meantime, I mean, we had my buddy Todd Stanton, who played the synthesizer that night. He and his video company, like between he and I, were putting together a documentary / concert of the whole experience. So we're hopefully going to have that out in like May or June. Nice. Just because now more than ever, I mean, not only was it a cool process and a cool story, but so much of what gets people invested in anything anymore is the story. And it's the work, but the work plus the story. And that's why you have podcasts. I mean, that's people like hearing more of the behind the scenes more now than ever before. Thanks to documentaries, reality TV, I mean, all that stuff, like people are more invested if they can hear more about the behind the scenes stuff. So we figured we'd document it and put some together with interviews and just talk about not just the album, but just like the process of DIY, the process of, putting something together while not on a record label without that support, and how you put it out in the world and how you distribute and all that. But also, just a documentary about community and rebuilding during, the last couple of years that were, I mean, it said
Horrible.
gutted like every industry, so.
Well, that's such a big movement now. It's just owning your own stuff. Like, yes, it'd be nice to get on this label or that label, or maybe you find a smaller label who allows you, like, yes, you use our label, but it's all your stuff, because I know for me, I mean, I'm not popular enough to have these podcast companies be like, hey, we want your podcast or whatever, but for me, it's still important to, if that were ever to happen, I want to say, cool. But I still want to own my material. Like, this is all my stuff. I worked hard for all this. So I don't want to just like sign with you and it's not mine anymore. And I think a lot of professionals and production companies, all that stuff are recognizing that too, to say like, hey, the model's changing. We have to change too, and how to find talent and keep talent.
Well, especially if, I mean, the talent has done so much by themselves already, then there's a lot less work for the, like a production company or a record company or any of them that are distribution in general. Like, there's so much less legwork they have to do. They don't have to put together a whole team to build this thing around the artist or the individual because they've already built all that. So
yeah. It's it's a cool thing. It's a good thing. It's nice that people just, that people are aware that artists and they want their own stuff to keep it theirs. So it hopefully people are recognizing that, and also recognizing the hard work that goes into that. Like, yes, I'm putting my own stuff out. It's a pain in the ass, but in the end, it's going to be a lot better for everybody.
Yeah, and I think like the biggest takeaway we got from it, and that's what I try to like teach to a lot of the younger up and coming like musicians right out of like TSA, it's up that are 18, 19, 20 years old, is that so many of them get so distracted from like views on like TikTok and Instagram, those are all important tools, obviously, but like so many of them get discouraged because they'll be like, why aren't my songs having any traction? Or why can't I fill up a room locally here when I go out and play, but I have 2,000 followers on this thing? And it was like, and that was the part that was nice for us, is that, we filled the room. It was only 100 people, but it was 100 people that we could all say we've had conversations with, that we have in connection with. And one of the biggest things that even labels are trying to tell artists now is like, make sure you build a real legitimate like following where you're from, because that means so much more in the grand scheme of things. It's kind of like when McDonald's became McDonald's, they didn't just open 3,000 restaurants and say, here we go. They had an actual core restaurant and model that like started getting legs under it, and then you build it from there. But I think people get distracted by the fame kind of thing without developing the product first. And that's what I think sometimes leads to really, really short careers, because they never even really perfected the craft or even got a good, strong like fan base. To grow from. They were just going for likes on social media, and it's like, that's important, but that doesn't actually drive a product, so that's, I mean, that's, from here we've got, of course, I've always got plans to grow more and do more things. But so I told one of my friends that came to see us that night, March 8th, and I told her, I was like, this is day one, because she's like, this is such an accomplishment. I was like, this is just day one. I'm like, we built this new thing. Now we got to build the next thing, and in the process, do more shows like this. Not only are we going to do 2 more shows, Jake and the Venom there, but like I said, there's a lot of great artists in this area that would really benefit from that same kind of treatment of having a show like that, because a lot of their music doesn't necessarily fit in a raucous like rock and roll bar. So So I mean, in the process, we built this thing, so let's let other people enjoy it too. So,
and you talked about day one. Make sure, and this is something I try to do. It's very difficult. A couple things. I saw this thing. It's someone said, you never reach the bar because you're always raising it. Right. So it can be a good thing. You're striving to do better, but also make sure you take time to celebrate things that are happening, or celebrate, like, hey, like that person said, like, hey, this is awesome. This is a milestone. You've been working towards this. take time to celebrate that also. Otherwise, it just feels like nothing's ever happening. Like make sure you're really focusing on that part of it too. Like keep raising that bar, but before you raise it again, acknowledge that you got to where you wanted to, and then go forward.
Yeah, and I think that's like part of the celebration is putting together the documentary so we can actually all sit around and go, yeah, this is real. This happened. I mean, I had a whole day to embrace and enjoy everything we did on March 8th, and then I entered into a 12-day long stretch of gigs again. So like, well, now I'm too busy to even think about how fun that was. But it's been fun just talking with people since then. I mean, I keep thinking it was a month ago at this point, and it's been a week and a half.
Yeah.
And because I got so busy right after that, and it was St. Patty's Day week, the week after. And so it's like, whoa, I'm like, I can't believe that was only a week and a half ago. I feel like it was a month ago already because I just got so busy. So I've run into people that were there that night and they're like, man, that show was so great. And I'm like, why are they still talking about this? Well, yeah, that was 9 days ago, 10 days ago. So I was like, so that's super cool. So, I mean,
good.
And having conversations like this, it makes you go, yeah, we did something really cool. And that's everybody's reaction has been very positive about it. And they just keep talking about it. And I said, that's great. That's, and I think that documentary will help actually put something in stone that lets us go, let's appreciate the heck out of this.
Can people, I know you're doing pre-sale for your other shows, is that still available for people to?
Yeah, if anybody wants to get a hold of the pre-sale tickets, because we'll start making the tickets public in about 2 weeks, I think, maybe about a week and a half. But if they're interested, they can just email realjpconcerts@gmail.com. And that's REEL, like film reel, realjpconcerts@gmail.com. And they just have to express whether they'd like to attend Tuesday, May 10th or Wednesday, May 11th, and express how many tickets they're going to look to get. And then I'll send over the buying information.
Great. I'll put that email in the show notes too, and explain, hey, if you want to go to the next performance, just email Jake.
Yeah, and do it sooner than later. Because we've already just in pre-sale already, we've already surpassed like 50 or 60 on each night. So
so half of each night so far.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
Yep.
Well, that's
awesome.
A
little more than half on each night, and so and we're shooting for 90 tickets a night. I mean, because you can fit 100 in there, 96 is comfortable. So if we can get 90 people a night, that's really, we'll be happy with that. And we're not going to have any problem with it. It's just that's why we're expressing to anybody that wants a pre-sale to go ahead and do the pre-sale, because there might not be any tickets when we go public, just like last time, when they sold out the pre-sale. So
awesome. Well, Jake, you've been on my podcast solo on the 16th episode, the 61st, and now the 99th.
Jeez.
So
congratulations, by the way. That's that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. I kept looking because I had all my March scheduled, so I kept counting, and then I added the Three Dads podcast, so that's on a different thing. So I had to subtract one, and then I added this other thing. I had to move stuff around. So I ended up next Thursday, it's with Jeff Stewart. So he'll be my 100th guest.
Nice.
Which it's cool because I've known Jeff since I was a little kid because he was real good friends with my uncle.
Yeah.
So I'd like to. I want to ask him when he first remembers me because like I said, he's known my uncle for a long time. So I'm looking forward to it. But in the meantime, check out Jake Pilewski on Spotify and Jake and the Venom on Spotify to get any of the music. Obviously, the one we talked about today was from Jake and the Venom, so check those out. Thanks again for letting me be a part of it. It was cool. I like doing those kind of things, especially for someone in my family. So it was a cool experience. And hopefully, I don't think, like you said, I don't think there'd be an issue of selling those out. So make sure people get their pre-sale if they want to get them. So hopefully you don't have to make them public. Hopefully it all books up. So
yeah, that's I think that's why we're going to wait another week and a half, make sure everybody that wants a pre-sale gets it. And then if we're sold out, then we're sold out. If not, there'll hopefully be a little bit left for the public. So
cool. All right, Jake. Well, enjoy your Sunday. Thanks for coming on the podcast. And like I always say, thanks for helping me start this thing. Now I can pretty much do it by myself, and that's because of you. You helped me out with a few things here and there, which is awesome. But That's why your ad will live on this podcast in perpetuity because you helped start it and got it going. So thank you.
Hey, I just led you to the water. So I appreciate you and congrats on everything that you're doing. I love it.
All right,
Thanks
man.
for having me.
Yeah. Thanks everybody for checking out this episode of the Nerdball Podcast. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you're hearing this on any of the podcatchers on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We're coming at you 2 times a week now, audio and video. Check us out on all the social medias. Just search the Nerdball Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're out there. Gmail is the nerdballpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to shoot us an email, we'll be happy to get back to you. Thanks to Real JP Multimedia, Cuttlefish Graphics, Perrysburg Junior High STEM Lab, and Big Daddy Graphics for helping out the podcast. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.